Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are attempting to navigate arguably one of the most complex and frankly tragic narratives in modern American celebrity history, the life and legacy of Orenthal James Simpson.
O.J. Simpson, yeah.
He was, and this is no exaggeration, an American icon, a figure of athletic royalty, widely regarded as one of the greatest running backs ever.
Absolutely. Top tier.
Yet, we all know that every single one of those athletic achievements was ultimately and irrevocably overshadowed by, well, a criminal trial, a really controversial acquittal for murder.
That polarization isn't just a footnote, it's really the absolute heart of his story. Our mission today for you is to try and cut through the decades of sensationalism, the media circus, all that collective memory.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
And extract the essential facts you need to understand how one person could possibly embody such extreme contrasting narratives in American culture. You know, from the pure glory of winning the Heisman Trophy to the absolute infamy of that white Bronco chase, we need to kind of map this whole trajectory.
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this enormous story. We should probably start right at the beginning. The making of the icon, the early years.
Makes sense.
So, O.J. Simpson was born in 1947, San Francisco. He grew up in genuine hardship, specifically in the low-income housing projects of Potrero Hill.
Right. Not an easy start. And the nickname OJ, obviously from his initials, Orenthal James.
Which quickly led to that playful orange juice reference.
Yeah, but the more famous nickname, the Juice, that evolved later, didn't it? It came to mean more than just him.
Right. It referred to his whole offensive line with the Bills at his peak. Like, he was the energy, the lifeblood of the team.
That's it. And a little trivia. His given name, Orenthal, apparently came from some obscure French or Italian actor his aunt liked.
Ah, okay.
What's immediately fascinating, though, is the physical journey he overcame just to be able to play sports at all. As a really young child, he developed rickets.
Rickets, yeah. Serious vitamin D deficiency.
Exactly. And he wore these heavy leg braces until he was 5 years old. This struggle, it's widely believed, actually contributed to his characteristic bow-legged stance later in life.
Which makes his explosive speed, his agility, all those record-setting achievements seem almost unbelievable, doesn't it?
Totally. He literally defied his physical beginnings. It's quite something.
And, you know, he came pretty close to a completely different life path in his teens, a much darker one.
How so?
Well, he joined a street gang, the Persian Warriors. Got arrested 3 times for minor stuff. It led to a brief incarceration at the San Francisco Youth Guidance Center.
Right, I remember reading about that. But that short stint, it sounds like it was actually a turning point.
It seems so. It was during that time he met baseball legend Willie Mays.
Willie Mays? Wow.
Yeah, Mays was visiting the center. And Simpson himself later credited that conversation. Mays basically encouraging him to turn things around, focus on sports, he said, that gave him the push he needed to reform and channel his energy.
Incredible, a chance encounter like that.
But those teenage troubles, they did have consequences. His high school grades were, well, mediocre.
So, not good enough for a big university right away.
Exactly. He had to attend the City College of San Francisco first, from 65 to 66. But there, he just immediately proved his athletic talent, named a junior college All-American running back.
Okay, so that was a necessary stepping stone.
That was the essential launch pad he needed. It allowed him to finally transfer to the University of Southern California, USC, in 1967.
And that's where things really took off. USC. This is where he goes from just a promising athlete to a genuine nationwide phenomenon.
The program, the visibility, it all just exploded.
He played running back for the Trojans, obviously, and he led the entire nation in rushing, both years he was there. 1967, over 1,500 yards, then 1968, almost 1,900 yards. Just dominant.
His college career, you could almost boil it down to one single moment that really defined that USC-UCLA rivalry. They still call it the biggest play of that era.
The 64-yard run against UCLA in 67.
It's one. Pivotal.
And that run, it wasn't just, you know, a great play in isolation. It secured a nail-biting 21-20 win in this incredibly crucial game.
Which clinched the national title for USC that year.
Exactly. That performance, that run, it instantly put his face on national magazine covers. It cemented him as this transcendent college star. It really changed the profile, I think, of what a college football player could achieve nationally right then.
And we can't forget, he wasn't just a football star. The guy had world-class speed, Olympic-caliber speed.
That's right, the track team.
In 67, he ran the 3rd leg on a USC sprint relay team. They actually broke the world record in the 4x110-yard relay. 38.6 seconds.
Wow. So that raw, explosive speed we saw on the football field, it was absolutely real, quantifiable.
No doubt it was a huge part of what made him seem so unstoppable.
And then 1968, that was his absolute pinnacle year in college, the year he just swept all the major awards.
Heisman Trophy, Maxwell Award, Walter Camp Award, all of them.
And the Heisman, well, wasn't just a win, it was a landslide. He beat the runner-up, Leroy Keys, by this astronomical margin, 1,750 points.
Which was the largest margin of victory for the Heisman for, 51 years? Just incredible dominance.
It really was. And USC, fittingly, they retired his number 32 jersey eventually, signaled the end of a truly special era for them.
So by 1969, coming out of college, he's arguably the most recognizable, the most celebrated, probably the most bankable college athlete in American history, stepping into a pro career with just astronomical expectations.
Exactly right. Which brings us neatly to part 2. The absolute peak of his fame. This is where he somehow manages to conquer the NFL, Hollywood, and Madison Avenue, all at the same time. He becomes this true cultural juggernaut.
The Buffalo Bills drafted him first overall in the 1969 NFL-AFL draft. They were not good the year before. 112-1, I think.
Yeah, they needed a savior. But Simpson didn't just sign on the dotted line. He immediately started leveraging that massive college fame.
Right, the contract demands.
He demanded what was, at that time, the largest contract in professional sports history, $650,000 over 5 years.
Which sounds like a lot even now, but back then.
It was staggering. That's over $4 million in today's money, roughly. But the significance, it wasn't just the amount. He actually threatened to skip pro football altogether and become a full-time actor.
Seriously, he played that card.
He did. It forced this high-stakes standoff with the Bills' owner, Ralph Wilson. When Wilson finally agreed to pay, it fundamentally changed the game. It showed how elite college stars could leverage their value against the pro leagues, set a huge precedent.
But despite the record contract, despite all the hype, his first 3 seasons in Buffalo were surprisingly quiet.
Yeah, kind of underwhelming, right? Averaged only about 622 yards per season.
The initial coach, John Rauch, apparently didn't build the offense around him. Used him for blocking, receiving, stuff that just wasn't his main strength.
Basically neutralized his greatest weapon, that running ability.
So when did it turn around?
The turning point, the moment his NFL career truly exploded, was 1972. Lou Saban took over as head coach.
Saban.
Saban immediately recognized what he had, made Simpson the undisputed centerpiece of a high-volume running attack, and Simpson just instantly delivered. Led the league that year, 12,251 rushing yards. He finally became the juice the Bills had paid all that money for.
And here's where he really enters sports mythology. 1973. This is the season, the defining season for his rushing record.
The 2,000-yard season.
He became the first NFL player ever to break that magic 2,000-yard rushing mark, finished with 2,003 yards.
And what makes that specific record still stand out, even with other guys hitting 2,000 later?
He's the only player ever to do it in a 14-game regular season.
That 14-game context is absolutely vital. Today, players get 16, now 17 games. To do it in 14, his average production per game was just phenomenal.
He still holds the record for single-season yards per game average, a 143.1. It's a stunning achievement of sustained dominance. Might never be broken, honestly.
And that season, he wasn't just chasing 2,000 yards. He broke Jim Brown's single-season rushing record, too, right?
Yep, broke Brown's record of 1,863 yards in the very last game. A heroic effort against the New York Jets. In the snow, I believe.
Just unbelievable. And deservedly, he was named the NFL Most Valuable Player and Offensive Player of the Year for 1973.
And he kept that up, didn't he? He maintained that dominance for a while.
Oh, yeah. He led the league in rushing 4 times total in the 70s, 72, 73, 75, and 76. He even had his career-best single game on Thanksgiving 1976 against the Lions, rushed for 273 yards.
Wow. Did they win?
Ironically, no. The Bills still lost that game. Sums up some of his Bills' tenure, maybe?
Right. Then injuries started creeping in.
Yeah, a knee injury hit him hard in 77. He was traded to his hometown team, the San Francisco 49ers, in 78. Played 2 final seasons there, battling knee problems, and retired in 1979.
So looking back at the stats, what did that unparalleled career add up to?
When he retired, he was second on the NFL's all-time rushing list, 11,236 career yards. Huge numbers.
And the honors followed. Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. First year of eligibility.
Naturally. And much later, named to the NFL 100th anniversary all-time team in 2019. Purely based on the athletic resume, it's absolutely top shelf, one of the greats.
But maybe the most enduring part of his career during that peak fame era wasn't just the football. It was his incredible ability to transition that sports fame into this broader cultural force through acting and, maybe even more importantly, those corporate endorsements.
Absolutely. That crossover appeal was unique.
He was actually laying the groundwork for acting even before his NFL career really took off. He appeared in an episode of Medical Center back when he was still negotiating that big Bills contract.
Smart move. Always thinking ahead, it seems.
And this is where we really need to pause and think about the racial context of the 1970s. It was different then.
Very different. Sports writer Ralph Wiley pointed out how Simpson successfully cultivated this image that just resonated across demographics. He was seen as a kind of unifying symbol, maybe one of the first black athletes to become a genuinely mainstream, quote, lovable media superstar, as People magazine put it in '75.
And he seemed conscious of that image, right? He avoided certain types of roles.
Yeah, he purposefully stayed away from, say, blaxploitation films. He sought roles that gave him mainstream credibility. He even said he wanted to, quote, tear down that picture of O.J. Simpson, the clean-cut athlete, to get believability as an actor.
And the absolute biggest amplifier of that mainstream image, the thing everyone remembers, was the Hertz campaign.
Oh, the Hertz ads, iconic. Started in 1975.
Think about the significance back then.
Yeah.
He became the first black man hired for a major corporate national advertising campaign. For a company like Hertz, kind of conservative, trying to beat Avis, that was groundbreaking. Yeah. And probably a bit risky for them at the time.
But it paid off massively. The campaign was this huge commercial success, him running through airports that "Go, OJ, go" slogan. It directly connected his athletic speed and charm to the rental car company's efficiency.
And the numbers back it up.
Oh, yeah. Hertz's annual profit jumped 50% in the first year alone. Brand awareness shot up over 40%. The CEO of Hertz actually negotiated his contract personally because Simpson was just that vital to their bottom line.
He leveraged that fame into movies, too. The Towering Inferno, the big miniseries Roots.
Important roles. But for a lot of people watching today, maybe the image that sticks is the comedic one.
Detective Nordberg.
Yeah.
The goofy, constantly injured guy in the Naked Gun trilogy.
Right, which really emphasized his charm, his comedic timing. He was genuinely funny in those.
And here's the piece of trivia that is just impossible to ignore now, given everything. The irony is staggering.
You mean the Terminator?
Yeah. He was actually considered by James Cameron to play the Terminator.
Yeah.
The killer cyborg. In 1984.
But the producers rejected the idea. Why?
They decided he was, quote, too nice to be convincingly seen as a killer.
Wow. Wow. That decision, based entirely on his universally appealing public persona at the time, it speaks volumes about how successful he was in crafting that image.
He also transitioned smoothly into broadcasting after playing. Worked as an NFL analyst for NBC for a few years.
And then moved to ABC's Monday Night Football in '83. Became the first black announcer on their top NFL broadcast team. Another barrier broken.
So by the early 90s, say 1992, he seemed set for life. Reports said he had like $10 million in assets, over $1 million a year in income. Half of that's still coming from that Hertz deal.
He was seemingly untouchable. That image, the Hertz man, the Hall of Famer, the affable broadcaster, it seemed absolutely bulletproof.
But it was ultimately a veneer, and tragically the cracks, they began to show. Profoundly. In his domestic life.
Which takes us inevitably to part 3. The domestic conflict, the horrific murders, and that surreal high-speed drama of the Bronco chase. The events that just shattered the icon and redefined celebrity scandal forever.
Simpson's first marriage was to Marguerite Whitley, from 1967 to 1979. They had 3 kids.
But there was tragedy there too, wasn't there?
Yes, sadly. Their youngest daughter, Erin, drowned in the family pool in 1979. Just awful. Now, regarding domestic violence in that first marriage, accounts conflict. Marguerite later denied making police reports in a '95 interview.
Okay. But the narrative really shifts with his second marriage to Nicole Brown.
He met Nicole in 1977. She was a waitress at a nightclub called the Daisy. They got married in 1985, had 2 children, Sydney and Justin.
But this relationship, it was incredibly tumultuous from early on, and the history of abuse started to become this terrifying and eventually very public pattern almost right after they married.
By the end of 1989, records showed Nicole claimed police had already visited their home 8 times for domestic violence calls.
8 times, and apparently none of those resulted in any real lasting help or protection for her.
The most infamous incident, the one that really made headlines even then, was New Year's Eve 1989. Police responded to a 911 call. They found Nicole outside the house, badly beaten and half naked, trying to hide in the bushes.
Just horrific. The police report said Simpson had punched her, slapped her, kicked her. It was Brutal.
And what came of that? Legally?
Simpson eventually pleaded nolo contenderia, no contest to spousal abuse.
So not admitting guilt, but accepting punishment.
Exactly. It keeps the record a bit cleaner. He got probation for 2 years, 120 hours of community service, and a fine, which, looking back, seems like an incredibly light penalty for such a violent attack.
And sadly, despite that conviction, the cycle didn't stop. Nicole filed for divorce in 1992, cited irreconcilable differences.
But they tried to reconcile briefly in 1993, didn't they?
They did, but it was short-lived. The violence apparently resumed. She called the police again that October after he allegedly got violent when he found a photo of a man she dated while they were separated.
It just kept happening. Prosecutors later, during the trial preparations, tallied a shocking 62 documented incidents of abusive behavior by Simpson towards Brown over the years.
62. And friends testified he'd threatened her life.
Yeah, multiple friends said Simpson had repeatedly threatened to kill her if he ever caught her with another man. This history, it's just absolutely crucial context for what happened next.
And the shocking news coverage of all this, it did eventually have a broader impact, right? Beyond just their family.
It did. It really pushed California and then the whole nation to start enforcing its domestic violence laws more effectively. Laws that were already on the books since '86 but weren't always applied strongly.
Which brings us to the absolute pivot point. Shortly after midnight, June 13th, 1994, Nicole Brown and her friend Ron Goldman were found stabbed to death, brutally, in the courtyard outside her condo in Brentwood.
And Ron Goldman, he was just there by chance, essentially. Returning a pair of glasses Nicole's mother had left at a restaurant earlier that day. Just tragically wrong place, wrong time.
Almost immediately, O.J. Simpson became the primary, really the only, person of interest.
The focus was entirely on him.
The drama then escalated incredibly quickly. 4 days later, June 17th, Simpson was scheduled to turn himself in to the police.
But he didn't show up.
No. Instead, his lawyer, Robert Kardashian,
Yes, that Robert Kardashian.
publicly read this letter from Simpson on live TV. It sounded very much like a suicide note. Simpson wrote things like, "Don't feel sorry for me. Please think of the real O.J. and not this lost person."
And then came the moment that basically changed live television, maybe media consumption, forever. The slow speed chase.
The white Ford Bronco.
Simpson in the backseat, apparently armed with a pistol, threatening to shoot himself. His friend and former teammate Al Cowlings driving him down the 405 freeway.
It was low speed, but the tension was just immense. It lasted over 2 hours, and it was beamed live onto almost every TV station in the country.
Famously interrupting Game 5 of the NBA Finals, Rockets versus Knicks.
That chase drew an estimated audience of 95 million people. Just think about that. 95 million watching this unfold live.
It was cultural history happening in real time. Journalists called it the most famous ride on American shores since Paul Revere's. Huge crowds gathered on freeway overpasses, on the streets, just to watch this white Bronco go by.
And the weird footnote to all that, the Bronco itself.
Right. Sales of the Ford Bronco actually spiked afterwards. Maybe an increase of like 7,000 sales that year. Proving that old saying, maybe. Any publicity.
Even that kind of publicity. Strange. But more importantly, on a serious note, domestic violence advocates really leveraged the intense spotlight on Nicole Brown's death.
That tragedy became instrumental, really, in pushing Congress to prioritize passing the Violence Against Women Act. That happened in September 1994.
And that act created the National Domestic Violence Hotline, which is still vital today. So the media frenzy was overwhelming, but it did force this desperately needed national conversation about domestic abuse.
And that intense media focus, it didn't stop with the chase. It just transitioned immediately into what everyone started calling the trial of the century, which takes us straight into part 4.
This trial, it was an 8-month saga, January to October 1995, held downtown L.A. at the Claire Shortridge Foltz Criminal Justice Center.
Yeah.
It was just this incredible spectacle of legal strategy, celebrity culture, and maybe most critically, race.
The scale was just massive. Simpson, represented by the so-called Dream Team, a roster of legal superstars.
Yep.
Johnny Cochran, Robert Shapiro, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, Robert Kardashian.
Powerhouse lineup.
Absolutely. Against the prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, Judge Lance Ito presiding. The trial itself became the longest criminal trial in California history up to that point. And the jury, sequestered for a record 266 days.
Imagine that. 266 days cut off from the world deciding this case. The pressure must have been immense.
Unimaginable. Now, the prosecution, they relied heavily on DNA and forensic evidence. Remember, DNA in major trials was still relatively new back then.
So what did they present?
They had evidence of the victim's blood found inside Simpson's Bronco. Nicole's blood found on a pair of his socks found in his bedroom. Fiber evidence matching Brown and Goldman found on a black leather glove recovered at Simpson's Rockingham estate. Scientifically, it looked pretty damning.
Look overwhelming on the surface.
But the defense, the dream team, they immediately started chipping away, finding cracks. Not just in the evidence itself, but crucially in how the LAPD handled that evidence.
Okay, how do they do that?
They argued photos were lost or mislabeled, that DNA samples were collected improperly, stored poorly, suggesting a serious possibility of contamination or even tampering. The narrative began to shift focus from Simpson himself to the competence or incompetence of the police department.
The Dream Team was clearly masterful at planting that seed of doubt. And the absolute centerpiece of their argument, the moment that probably everyone remembers, the moment that might have won the case,
Right.
was the glove.
The glove controversy?
Yeah.
One bloody glove found at the crime scene, its match found behind Simpson's house by Detective Mark Furman.
And the defense demanded Simpson try on that glove found at his home right there in the courtroom.
They did, and famously, dramatically, the glove just didn't appear to fit. He struggled to get it on over his hand, especially with a latex glove underneath, which the prosecution insisted he wear.
That visual was incredibly powerful for the jury, wasn't it?
Absolutely devastating for the prosecution. They tried to recover, arguing the glove had shrunk from being soaked in blood, then frozen and thawed multiple times for testing. Or, maybe more desperately, they theorized Simpson had deliberately stopped taking his arthritis medicine to make his hands swell.
Did that hold water, the arthritis medication theory?
No, the defense checked the jail medical logs and showed Simpson was still taking his arthritis medication daily. It completely dismantled that specific counterargument.
And that failure, the visual of the ill-fitting glove, gave Johnny Cochran perhaps the most iconic line of the entire trial, maybe of any trial.
During his closing arguments, simple, rhyming, unforgettable, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit.
People magazine later wrote that specific moment, that demonstration, was just absolutely crucial to the eventual acquittal. It resonated.
Hugely. But beyond the glove, just as critical to the defense strategy was the race and corruption angle.
Right. The timing of this trial was key.
Absolutely. It happened against this incredibly tense backdrop in Los Angeles. The Rodney King beating and the riots were still fresh memories. The Latasha Harlan shooting verdict, public trust in the LAPD, especially in the Black community, was arguably at an all-time low.
And the defense capitalized on that brilliantly.
They focused relentlessly on Detective Mark Furman. He was the one who found that key piece of evidence, the matching glove at Simpson's home.
And Furman had a history, didn't he?
A documented history. The defense unearthed these audio tapes where Furman repeatedly used vile racial slurs and expressed deeply racist views. Then, when he denied under oath ever using the N-word in the past 10 years, those tapes proved he'd committed perjury right there on the stand.
That must have been explosive in the courtroom.
It was a bombshell. This confirmation of blatant racism and perjury from a key detective, combined with the fact that Furman had climbed over the wall and entered Simpson's property without a search warrant initially, it allowed the defense to pivot the entire narrative.
So it wasn't just about O.J. anymore.
Exactly. It became, can you trust anything presented by the LAPD? Can you trust evidence collected by this detective? It shifted from questioning the specific evidence to questioning the fundamental integrity of the entire investigation, the whole institution.
So was the trial always destined to be less about guilt or innocence and more about who could tell the more convincing story about the LAPD, given the resources Simpson had?
That's a very strong argument. For many people, particularly in the Black community, Furman's proven lies just confirmed their worst fears. That Simpson was being framed, or at least railroaded, by a corrupt system they had experienced for generations. As one commentator, Charles F. Coleman Jr., famously put it later, Black people didn't love O.J. Simpson, they hated the LAPD.
And the public reaction reflected that divide immediately.
Sharply, starkly. Along racial lines, polls showed most African Americans felt justice was served, or at least that the prosecution hadn't proved its case beyond a reasonable doubt given the police misconduct. Meanwhile, most white Americans and Latinos were outraged, believing he'd gotten away with murder.
The New York Times even noted that ultimately the defense presented an overwhelming case, not necessarily for innocence, but with many grounds for reasonable doubt. Grounds they had very skillfully manufactured through Furman and the glove.
And the jury agreed. After only about 3 hours of deliberation, which seemed shockingly fast after 8 months of testimony, They rendered their verdict on October 3, 1995.
Not guilty.
Not guilty on both counts of murder.
The reaction was instantaneous, wasn't it? How many people watched the verdict?
Estimates range from 100 to 150 million people tuned in live across the nation. The cameras captured celebrations in some black neighborhoods in L.A., seeing it as a victory against police corruption. Elsewhere, widespread shock and disbelief. It just laid bare that racial chasm the case had exposed and arguably widened.
So, legally, in the criminal sense, he was a free man. But that wasn't the end of the legal battles, was it? Which brings us to part 5, the aftermath, the financial repercussions, and his final legal struggles.
Not the end at all. In 1997, the families of Ron Goldman and Nicole Brown Simpson brought a civil lawsuit against him for wrongful death. Rufo versus Simpson.
And this trial was different from the criminal one in some key ways, right?
Dramatically different. Firstly, no cameras allowed in the courtroom this time. Secondly, and crucially, the judge excluded all the inflammatory, racially charged arguments about the LAPD and Mark Fuhrman. That whole narrative was off the table.
And the standard of proof was different, too. That's really important for listeners to understand.
Absolutely critical. In the criminal trial, the prosecution had to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a very high bar, the highest in the U.S. legal system. Protects against wrongful conviction.
But in a civil trial,
the standard is much lower. The plaintiffs, the Goldman and Brown families, only needed to prove liability by a preponderance of the evidence.
which basically means
Simply that it was more likely than not, just over 50% likely that Simpson was responsible for the deaths, a much easier threshold to meet. So without the racial diversion, with that lower burden of proof, the outcome felt almost inevitable to many observers this time.
and the civil jury's verdict.
Unanimous. They found Simpson liable for the wrongful death of Ron Goldman and for battery against both Goldman and Nicole Brown.
And the financial penalty.
Huge. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages. That broke down to $8.5 million in compensatory damages, mostly to the Goldman family, and then a whopping $25 million in punitive damages designed to punish him.
Did he ever pay that?
That judgment, with interest piling up over the years, became this massive looming debt. The Goldman family, particularly Fred Goldman, Ron's father, relentlessly pursued collection. By 2022, the amount owed was alleged to be around $96 million. By the time Simpson died in 2024, Fred Goldman's attorney claimed it was closer to $117 million.
The verdict had immediate consequences for Simpson, too, right?
Yeah.
Financially.
Oh, yes. He defaulted on the mortgage for his famous Rockingham estate. The house was eventually bought in foreclosure and demolished in 1998. A symbolic end. The Goldman family did manage to recover some money over the years through auctions of his belongings.
Including the Heisman Trophy.
One of his Heismans, yes. That auction netted almost $500,000 for the Goldmans, but Simpson made a very shrewd move to protect some assets.
How did he do that?
He relocated to Florida. Florida is one of only a handful of states with laws that strongly protect certain types of assets, specifically pensions like his NFL and Screen Actors Guild pensions, from being seized by creditors to pay judgments.
So that multi-million-dollar civil judgment couldn't touch his pensions.
Correct. Those pensions became his primary source of income, shielded from the Goldman and Brown families. A legal but controversial maneuver.
Then came another really controversial chapter, the book deal in 2006, If I Did It.
Ugh, that book, yeah. This was Simpson's attempt, apparently, to write a book detailing how he would have hypothetically committed the murders.
Hypothetically.
Right. It was framed as a confession, but with this thin veil of if. His eldest daughter, Arnell, actually testified later that she pitched the idea to him as a way for his kids to get a financial legacy. She even called it blood money.
Did it get published initially?
The original publisher, Regan Books, planned to release it, but the public outcry was just massive. Advertisers threatened boycotts. It was canceled.
What did the book actually say in this hypothetical account?
It involved this vaguely described unwilling accomplice he called Charlie. Simpson wrote that after confronting Nicole and Goldman, Nicole fell and hit her head. Then, quote, something went horribly wrong, but I can't tell you how. He claimed he basically blacked out and regained consciousness later with no memory of the act itself.
A convenient gap in the hypothetical memory.
Very convenient. It was structured to imply guilt without him ever explicitly saying, I did it.
But the book did eventually come out, didn't it? Under different circumstances.
Yes. A bankruptcy court awarded the rights to the book manuscript to the Goldman family in 2007 as partial satisfaction of that massive civil judgment.
So the Goldmans published it.
They did. They retitled it If I Did It, Confessions of the Killer. And very pointedly on the cover design, they dramatically shrunk the word if and embedded it within the eye so the title visually screamed, "I did it. Confessions of the Killer. A final symbolic jab."
Wow.
Meh.
But even after the financial losses, the book fiasco, Simpson's legal troubles still weren't over.
No. His last major run-in with the law came in 2007 in Las Vegas.
The memorabilia robbery.
Exactly. Simpson and a group of other men went into a hotel room at the Palace Station Casino. They confronted some memorabilia dealers and took a large amount of sports collectibles, items Simpson claimed had been stolen from him previously. Crucially, though, guns were involved.
Simpson denied guns were used, didn't he?
He did. But several of his co-defendants testified that guns were definitely brandished during the confrontation. That changed everything.
So he was arrested again. What were the charges this time?
Armed robbery, kidnapping because they prevented the dealers from leaving the room, conspiracy, and other charges. And the contrast with the LA trial was stark. This time, he was convicted. In October 2008, by an all-white jury in Clark County, Nevada. Convicted on all major counts.
And the sentence.
Pretty severe. A total of 33 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 9 years. He ended up serving his time at the Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada.
He served nearly 9 years.
Almost exactly 9 years. He was granted parole in 2017, and interestingly, he got an early discharge from parole in December 2021 due to good behavior. So his direct legal supervision officially ended then.
Which brings us finally to part 6. His final years and the enduring, deeply polarized nature of his legacy.
After getting out of prison, Simpson lived relatively quietly. Thurston, Florida for a bit, then mostly in Las Vegas, Nevada, living off those protected pensions NFL Screen Actors Guild.
Did he try to re-enter public life at all?
He struggled to really remake a public life. He did join social media, particularly Twitter, posting occasional videos, commenting on sports or current events, often seemingly trying to recapture that old affable persona. But health became a major issue in his later years.
The CTE concerns.
Yeah, he openly discussed his suspicion that he suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE. That degenerative brain disease we now know is tragically common in football players due to repeated head trauma.
And his lawyers had tried to use that idea before, right?
Yeah, his lawyer had actually argued during an appeal attempt for the Vegas conviction that potential brain damage from his football career might explain some of his later impulsive actions and poor judgment. It reflects our growing and frankly disturbing understanding of the long-term physical toll of the game.
And then came the cancer diagnosis.
He was diagnosed with cancer in 2023. Later reports specified it was prostate cancer. He died on April 10, 2024, in Las Vegas. He was 76 years old.
The reaction to his death, it seemed to perfectly encapsulate that split legacy, didn't it?
Absolutely. You saw the NFL itself, the Buffalo Bills, USC, the very institutions that had celebrated his athletic greatness, they essentially remained silent. No official condolences, no tributes published.
A deafening silence in a way.
It really was. Contrast that with the entities that govern his specific achievements. The Pro Football Hall of Fame did issue a news release acknowledging his passing and lowered its flag to half-staff. They focused on his place in football history. The Heisman Trophy Trust also offered condolences.
So a clear division, even in institutional memory. Athletics acknowledged, the rest complex.
That dichotomy is perhaps the most honest reflection of how history is grappling with his name. You can't erase the records, but you can't ignore the rest.
And the Goldman family, their reaction.
Fred Goldman released a very powerful, very definitive statement. He said that with Simpson's death, the hope for true accountability has ended. But he affirmed that their decades-long mission wasn't just about Simpson. It was about advocating for all victims and pursuing justice. And that would continue.
Even in death, that financial shadow was still there, wasn't it? The civil judgment.
Oh, yes. Simpson's estate executor immediately announced plans to liquidate whatever assets existed. There were outstanding debts to the IRS, the California Tax Board, and of course, most prominently, that massive civil judgment. Fred Goldman was still relentlessly seeking enforcement of that figure, now claimed to be around $117 million.
And a final, maybe slightly macabre detail about what happened after his death.
Yes. Simpson was cremated. And according to his estate lawyer, his ashes were given to his 4 surviving children, reportedly made into jewelry for them.
And in pop culture, his legacy seems destined to be marked by, well, by the jokes, too.
Absolutely. Comedians like Norm Macdonald famously and controversially at the time on SNL's Weekend Update relentlessly mocked his acquittal. Those jokes went viral all over again immediately after his death. It just reminds us that for many, his story remains this incredibly dark, complex, and sometimes darkly comic chapter in American history.
So after unpacking all of this,
Yeah.
what does it all mean for you, the listener? Where do we land?
Well, Simpson's life, it just generated this tidal wave of books, movies, documentaries, endless heated debates about justice, about celebrity, about race relations in America. His story really serves as this profound, if tragic, demonstration of how fame can both elevate someone to an almost godlike status.
Like he was in the 70s and 80s.
Exactly, and simultaneously how that same fame can distort reality, both for the person and in the eyes of the public. It made the horrific crimes he was accused of seem impossible to some who only saw the icon, and maybe tragically inevitable to others who saw the pattern of behavior behind the scenes.
The sheer depth of the division he created, or maybe revealed, is what really stands out most, I think.
Me too. You had the criminal trial, finding reasonable doubt the highest legal standard largely because of documented police misconduct and a brilliant defense strategy that successfully framed the LAPD itself. Result, acquittal.
Then, the civil trial, requiring only a preponderance of the evidence more likely than not, with all the racial issues excluded by the judge. Result, unanimously found liable.
Understanding how that happened, how those two outcomes were possible, it's like a shortcut. Not just to understanding a celebrity scandal, but to grasping this foundational moment in recent American history when all our contradictions about race, about the power of celebrity, about the perceived integrity of law enforcement were just laid absolutely bare for the world to see.
So, the ultimate synthesis of this deep dive, the final provocative thought we want to leave you with, is this. How could two American juries, looking at essentially the same core evidence of a double murder, reach two completely opposite conclusions? Not guilty in the criminal court, liable in the civil court. What does that stark contrast reveal about the deep, perhaps enduring fissures within the U.S. justice system and within American society itself?
Thinking about that question, about why those two outcomes could coexist, that's not just about O.J. Simpson anymore. It's about understanding America. That critical question, I think, ensures this knowledge, this whole complex story, will remain essential for generations to come.
Food for thought indeed. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.